Welcome, everyone. I really appreciate my audience. I really appreciate my subscribers. I really appreciate all the loves and all my episodes, 100 and almost 130 episodes. We started this podcast in October 2021, and I'm so glad that I've had met some really wonderful, talented people. It's just incredible some of the things that you can do when you connect a microphone to a. And I'm going to advertise StreamYard. Thanks for the free shirt. And I'm going to advertise them. And this is what I use for streaming. And I really appreciate the ability to do this. And thank you, Christian. Thank you, Julie. Um, Julie Riley, that is. And everyone else associated with the builders of StreamYard. Now, I digress. Now we're going to talk about Fossegrim Records. This is Kevin Corr, and he's a South Jersey-based heavy metalist who has this label called Fossegrim Records, and he also is a member of the Eternal Forlorn band. So, Kevin, pleased to meet you on the platform. Really, really happy to see you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Can you give us a little bit of, I want to say a little bit of background, but can you give us a little bit of history of who Kevin Corr is, where you found yourself, and why did you choose number one, Eternal Forlorn as a band name, and how did you get Fossegrim Records off the ground?
All right, so I started with music when I was 7, singing for a church choir. Started doing piano as well for them. Kind of got bored with that. I was taking lessons. They weren't really doing anything for me. I liked the freedom more than I liked learning the theory. I wanted to experiment kind of. So I moved to various instruments until I kind of found guitar at age 13 and rolled with that. So I'd been writing songs since about that time. You know, as I said earlier, mental health kind of plays a large part into why I do what I do, and kind of use it to help maintain my life and keep myself going and whatnot. And it kind of started, back then when my brother died when I was younger.
So
And
sorry about that.
thank you. And it went from there, and I started writing, full songs at that point. It was only guitar because, younger, I didn't have all the experience that I have now. And, it's just something to do to take my mind off of things when things got a little too heavy, you know what I mean? And then from there, it was just something I would do in the meantime. I'd go to work, come home. I played in a couple of bands with a few people. It never really worked out. Never seemed to be much of a group person. I have a lot of weird influences and weird ways of expressing myself musically. A lot of people don't like that. It was outside of the box. It wasn't linear. So, if you're working with someone that likes to stay on a set path, it gets difficult sometimes. So after my last band broke up, it was probably about 2016, 2017, I want to say.
Your last band broke up. What band was that, and why did you break up? Infighting?
No, it wasn't fighting. We were called Disarm and Descend. We, in my opinion, were pretty good. We had a solid drummer. We had 2 solid guitarists. I played the role of bass for that one. And we had a singer. He was relatively green, but he had potential. He was willing to learn, and we just wanted to do it. So, we were together for maybe about a year and a half, I want to say. We played a couple of shows. And then, comes down to everybody has their problems. Nobody knows how to handle them. And the only people that were left were me and the drummer. So we found another friend, started playing with him. He was doing guitar. I started doing guitar and bass at that time. And then life just got in the way and it fell apart. Um, things that happened out of control at that point. It wasn't like the first part where it was like, all right, come on, guys, get your stuff together. But yeah, after that, it was just like, I don't think I want to work with people anymore. And I kind of stuck with that. And then, just kept going about my career and did it as a hobby for myself. Once the pandemic started, that was what kind of got me going with wanting to do this full time and actually try to do something with it. I got laid off when I was told I wouldn't get laid off. And that whole year was just kind of very interesting. What with the, I guess the unemployment stuff. And then they were like trying to make it was just weird. So I ended up finding another job in the meantime. And then it just clicked, like, why don't you do something with this? Why don't you try to, get everything recorded and put it out there and open a label and see what happens? Because, what's it going to hurt? You never know if you don't try. So in March of 21, that was when I decided to set up Fossegrim, filed for an LLC and sole proprietorship, and did all the channels annexed so I could use Eternal Forlorn as a name and all that and operate without penalty. And it just kind of started helping more in a sense as I would get these songs recorded. And it wasn't just guitar. I was starting to add drums, bass, vocals, all these layers, instruments and things. But it just... So the name Fossegrim came from use a lot of Norse mythology as far as like a basis for the stories in my albums. And one that stuck out as mainly a guitarist, because that's my most experienced instrument, was this Fossegrim spirit that I'd found in Finnish folklore. It's basically a water troll like spirit that would basically hang out by like a waterfall lake area and would lure you in with the sound of playing the fiddle. Non-maliciously, intention wise, the point was to lure you in and then teach you how to play the fiddle. And I just thought that was kind of cool. Especially, I like to help people. I like to try to teach people where I can. So I just felt that fit, As far as Eternal Forlorn, that came about, as I said, I used the music I wrote for mental health purposes and trying to help through that. So it came from a sense of looking back at everything I'd been through and how I've been translating that to kind of put it into the music and then just release it and be done with it. Like, I don't need to feel this anymore kind of thing. So I was like, what would be a cool name? And then I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm like, I'm usually in a pretty decent amount of constant suffering. And I'm like, that sounds cool, but that's a little cliche. And I'm like, hold on a minute, break out the thesaurus as we do when we're writing stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that actually sounds pretty cool. So let me roll with that. And then I looked it up. I'm going through Spotify and Apple Music. Like, nobody has this name, right? And I was like, all right, cool. So it worked. And I thought it fit, I mean, even with the heavier stuff, with the acoustic stuff, it's all it's all the different emotions that come with pain, the frustration, the anger, the sadness, the emptiness, So I just thought it fit, and it seemed to work out well.
That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But don't forget to take care of your own mental health. Even though you've been there helping others, you got to take a step back and say, you know what? I'm beginning to feel it myself. Burnout. I need to step back for a bit, take a few trips, go outside, look at blue sky. Thank God that I've woke up this morning. Thank God that I'm independent. I don't have to worry about people taking care of me. I'm good. Take something to you know, something to eat, have a drink, just do whatever makes you happy, and then
Of
approach
course.
everything and say, okay, so what can we do? Because you're going to get to this point where you're going to suffer burnout. And when you really have a hip hop artist or a rapper or someone who wants to be part of the Fossegrim Records and they want you to sign, you're going to be in no shape to sign them because you just lost your hold. So you got to make sure you take care of yourself, my friend.
Well, that happened 2021 for me, where I reached that point, and then I guess I kind of adjusted and figured out where my threshold is. Um, I was going way too hard, working 12-hour days, and then coming home, and I would spend about close to 8 to 10 in the studio.
Mm.
And it was just not good. Get like 2 hours of sleep, wake up, do it again the next day. And I did this for a good majority of a year. And at the end of it, yeah, I just started falling apart. You get to where you're gaining weight because you're not maintaining. You're just everything is going nuts. I had a bad health reaction. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it was heart related. It affected my vision a little bit, and that got all cleared up, and I'm good now. So now I do try to limit myself. I don't push past a certain point of the night, and I make sure that I do space things out. Whereas writing and recording has become easier now that I have a little bit more experience with it. So I can start something, walk away, and all right, I'll get back to this tomorrow or the next day. So it's not as oh my God, I got to get this done now as it used to be. Like it felt like before I didn't have the time because it was so much work to do. Whereas now I'm like, it's not as bad. It's manageable. So
It's very important for our mental health because we had another artist on our platform, and during the pandemic, they created charcuterie boards. They built from scratch their own drones and flew them. They did everything because they couldn't perform. Now they're performing like human, go nuts. And also, they were able to learn sign language so that they can go out and not only perform and have a sign language interpreter, but also interpret sign language themselves too. So they did all that during the pandemic. And I know that the pandemic really kind of, I don't want to say destroyed, but it affected opera singers. A lot of tenors, a lot of sopranos, they couldn't perform. So I know during the pandemic, if you have a mental health issue, it's probably added on top to
oh
that.
yeah,
How
absolutely.
did you manage to get through it, my friend?
Uh, I don't know. Quite honestly, I don't know. I do want to say the music helped. I know I've said that already, but it's very true. Um, it wasn't like where I was, we were allowed to have like people over. So I guess I would get done work. I would have a couple of people over to kind of stay sane every once in a while. And then on the days where it was just like, all right, everybody's, staying inside, I would do the music and that would help. How much I did it would hurt, but it did keep me from going over the deep end as far as dealing with loss of interaction, uh, the loss of what was my job at the time. Luckily, I did find another one, but and that helped too. Working a lot kind of kept my social uh, abilities sharp, I guess would be the way to say that. With being able to interact with people that I work with, so it wasn't as bad as it should have been for how abrupt everything was, I guess. But, I mean, not an ideal time regardless. I hadn't really been playing shows as Eternal Forlorn because that's something I'm still kind of working out. It's very difficult when, you play all of the instruments that are in the song and then I go up there and it's like, all right, well, I have a guitar and a voice, and that's about all I can do. So you got to compile backing tracks and then delete the parts you're going to do live. And it's still something I'm sorting out. So I was lucky enough not to have to worry about that. Because I feel like that would have been a lot worse for me. If it was, hey, you're playing, and then it's like, oh, now you can't. I probably would have had some more issues with that than I would have, not worrying about that. That is one thing I've kept on the back burner for these couple of years. In a sense of I'll just kind of deal with it when I need to. But I'm more just trying to get music recorded, put it out there. As I said before we started, I got Cranium Glitch is his band name. My buddy Will, and he needed help, so he had this album he's making. He was just frustrated. The technology aspect, it's not easy. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of stuff to learn, and computers don't always like to work with you. So he reached out because he needed some help, and I found him in I don't know if it was Hellbound Metal Alliance or Band Together. I think it was Hellbound Metal Alliance group that I found him in. And yeah, like I said, he reached out, and I was like, hey, give me some time because I don't know. And then I get a month in and I realize, oh, okay, I'm actually keeping up with what I want to do with myself and have extra time left over without being burnt out. So I reached back out and I'm like, okay, yeah, let's go. Let's do this. And I just got his stuff uploaded yesterday, actually. So his album's coming out. It's called Mental Construct. That's coming out on September 6th on all streaming platforms. So that's going to be cool. It's a really good album. I'm happy I came across him because, very similar people, very similar influences. And it just kind of worked out really well right off the bat, which is really cool. I like when stuff like that happens.
How many bands do you have under your roster currently besides your friend?
All right. So it's 3 total. It's me as Eternal Forlorn. It's my buddy Jared and myself as this industrial metal project called Nocturnal Terror, and it's Cranium Glitch. So that's all we got right now. But there's a lot going on,
Yeah. Like there's a lot of musicians and bands who couldn't even perform during the pandemic. You were mentioning that, but then it brought to mind about several that I can remember who started online when the pandemic happened, like Randy Rainbow, Chris Mann. A lot went online, and they able to sell tickets to their shows. For me, my mental health is sort of like we were able to work from home because most of the things we did in our job we could do from home.
Right.
So knowing that we couldn't, be with one another, we had to do the 6 foot, social distancing, and even the mall up here had like security guards. And why are you coming in? Where are you going? And I'm like, this is like a dictatorship, and
Yeah.
but to keep myself sane, because it's just, cats really can't talk back. So you could have a conversation with your cat. But I kept the TV on so I could hear people, makes look like people are actually in my apartment. It kept me sane.
Yeah.
But I did go out and enjoy, with the mask on, going out and enjoying myself. So it really didn't affect me. I was hoping that maybe when this pandemic happened, I had a wife and kids to spend time with, but didn't happen. But and now that we're sort of in kind of like a pandemic-y right now, but not really. Like everyone's doing their own thing again. It's like it never happened. And
Yeah.
hopefully that Fossegrim Records, you get more and more under your roster. I was reading here about how you started singing in choirs and started
Yeah.
playing instruments at age 7. Now you started with piano and then the clarinet, violin, and flute. Would you consider yourself a multi-instrumentalist? Do you actually use these instruments today as well?
I haven't played clarinet since 8th grade. I don't even know if I still could, to be honest with you. Same with like flute, woodwind stuff, especially. Um, I'm like in the process of quitting smoking cigarettes, and it's like an off and on thing, and I don't know if my lungs could handle it yet. I'm surprised I could still sing, to be honest with you. I do, however, want to incorporate instruments like that. I actually am just came across a buddy of mine found it for me. It's this ESP, the guitar company, made this one-off violin for a Japan artist um, to use, and it's something that stuck out to him. And he's like, "Here, you gotta look at this." And I think I'm gonna grab it from him because I don't like using synthetic strings. You don't get the same attack that you do with a bow when you're trying to pronounce something in the song. So I wanted to grab that. I'm probably going to grab that. So I will start incorporating that. But I do use the piano, the keyboard, whatever you will. It's a MIDI controller, but it works the same. They're weighted keys, so it's realistic sounding and feeling. And then the guitars and bass, of course. But I do like incorporating stuff like that, especially being that I have the Viking Norse mythology theme. I feel like stuff like that, it just fits so perfectly to use like a violin, or some sort of woodwind like an ocarina or something. I've used that in a couple of songs and it sounded pretty good. Not a real one. I wish I could have had a real one, but it was a synthesized one. But it came out good. It sounded good, and it just, like I said, it fits the theme. I want to incorporate it because it just holds true to that original intention of what I wanted to do.
Kevin, I love the violin. I mean, like I always thought of learning it. It all started with my fascination and interest and obsession with Little House on the Prairie. Charles Ingalls played the violin. I'm like, hey, I like that. Maybe it's because I want to be Charles Ingalls. Maybe I want to be married to a woman like Ma Ingalls. But I love the violin, and ever since I've had violinists on my podcast, and I learned so much about violins, how to clean it with the rosin, um, the strings, the bows, what it's made out of. Um, I noticed that when you start playing instruments at age 7, that you waited almost 8, 9 years before you started on the guitar. Why did you wait so long?
Well, like I said, it started in a church environment. So I kind of was exploring what I had available in that realm first, which, because I went to a Catholic school in Philadelphia. So it was more the flute, the violin, and piano was what they would use when we would go over and do stuff in church, or when we would go over there from the music class and do stuff for the church, which were two separate things that kind of crossed over after a little bit. Um, but it was just the violin. I didn't even really play that long. Like I did, and I was like, okay, I could do this, and I'm like, but it's not free enough. I don't have the room that I want to explore the sounds. I like to jump around. Um, and I think, well, the first 2 years I was more focused on singing and piano. Um, and that was like the gateway to doing all this. So I wanted to make sure it was what I wanted to do. And then from there, that's when I'm like, all right, let me try this. Let me try this. Clarinet lasted for a couple of years too. I did that from like, I think it was like 5th to 7th grade, if I remember correctly. Which don't quote me on that because I could be wrong by a year or two. But then again, that was one that was fun, so I stuck with that for a little bit because I didn't want to just jump around, and my parents are like, "Why are we spending the money if you're just going to stop playing?" kind of thing. I was grateful that I had them to encourage me and actually allow me to explore this, because that's not something a lot of people get all the time. And so that's why I waited. I didn't want to just keep jumping from instrument to instrument like I did from piano to clarinet to flute and everything, because it's not cheap. I mean, it was cheaper back then, but it's something you want to actually try and see where you can get with it. And it just, to me, it became a boredom thing. Like I said, like you get into the theory of it and I'm like, okay, that's cool and all, but I could feel that already. I don't need a label for it. I just want to like teach me how to play, you know? So, and then once I got to the guitar, I stopped with all the lessons and I just started doing it myself. So,
Yeah, I can imagine what you went through, especially during the time you were at the Catholic school, and how they treated people in the Catholic school,
yeah,
and
being a
also
rocker, it wasn't easy.
and all the tattoos. Um, I don't know how what's his name, Marilyn Manson. I forget his real name.
I forget
Marilyn
his real name
Manson,
too.
Paul something. But and I'm thinking, my friend. So before even the age of 24, when you started um, playing bass and drums, what were you doing from age 14 to age 23 if you had to wait till the age of 24 to start learning bass and drums? What did you do within that time?
It was all guitar as far as music. I had fallen in love with the instrument, the freedom of it, the creativity that you could use from it, because you have regular tones, then you have natural harmonics, then you have pinch harmonics, and you can make all these crazy sounds. And then you discover a stop tail bridge with a whammy bar, and then that's fun. Then you
Mhm.
upgrade to a Floyd Rose, and you're like, oh, wow, this is amazing. And it's just all the crazy stuff you could do with it. And I just focused on that, and I just played guitar a lot and I practiced a lot. I mean, high school, I would always have an acoustic or an electric with me and just play unplugged, you know? Um, so I focused on kind of getting that skill down and, just living life, doing what I had to do in life, picking a career path, all that kind of stuff. Um, Figuring out what I wanted to do well, I guess to me, it's the background portion of my life so I could do what I want to do with music. Um, and I just wanted to make sure that the other stuff was something I wanted to do. I was actually convinced to learn how to play the bass when I was 24, because of one of the bands I was in. The lead singer played guitar, and I had who was my best friend at the time, who was a guitarist, and they're like, dude, just play bass, just play bass. And I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I feel like that going from guitar to bass, I'm like, that might bore me, or it might not feel like it's the same amount of freedom because I have to be more linear and keep a beat and match the drummer. And then he showed me this band from Canada called Beyond Creation. And their bassist is probably one of the most ridiculous bass players I've ever seen play.
Wow.
And 6-string fretless bass, doing sweep arpeggios and taps on a bass, almost matching the cadence of a guitar, but still keeping the rhythm with the bass section. And I'm
Wait a minute.
like, yeah,
Wait a minute. You haven't seen Davy 504 or Charles Berthold play their bass guitars. You'll be rethinking that.
no, I have not seen them play yet.
I've seen some great bass players. Another one is a 9-year-old by the name of, she goes by the name of Ellen Plays Bass. She's 9 years
Okay,
old and she plays the bass like you wouldn't believe.
that's
So,
crazy.
but I've seen some really, really killer bass players out there.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and like, yeah, Victor Wooten, of course, is one of the greats without a doubt. And yeah, so I started getting into all that, and I was just like, okay, you got me. I can do whatever I want. We can make this work. And I was like, all right. Went out that weekend, bought an amp, bought a bass, and that was what kind of started that. Because at the time, I didn't know how much freedom you could have with that. I thought it was a restriction to my creativity. And you know, you find out and you move forward, and you're like, oh, I should have been doing this the whole time. But
did you you didn't have to take lessons, of course. You just started learning the drums and the bass on your own. But what do you find is the most difficult instrument to play? Like knowing that you play piano, clarinet back when in public school, violin, flute, and bass and drums, and you put all these instruments in front of you, point to the one that's the most difficult to learn.
But yeah, no, drums would have to be the most difficult for me, because it's not just okay, two things you're keeping track of. It's you have all of your limbs moving, and most of the time your legs are separate from your arms. They're two different motions. So
How do you
you
do
know
that? Like I've always seen drummers like Phil Collins and the late Taylor Hawkins and all. How do you do that? Like how do you
it
go boom and then do the and then you have to use your foot boom boom at the same time? How does that? How do you learn that?
I don't know. I'm not that great at it. Still, I do a lot of editing. But it's I don't I wouldn't even know how to describe that because I don't really consider myself a drummer. It's just something I do. Um, for me, it's easier with double bass because if I can keep my feet on that kind of rotation, then it's like, all right, that's second nature. Now that that's there, I can do what else I have to do and then just stop when I have to stop. Uh, so for me, it's easier for like, heavier stuff with like fast paced bass drum, fast paced fills or like blast beats. Once you get out of that, then I'm like, what do we do now? So,
So is
but
that how you
it's
is
still a
that how you
learning
get?
process.
Is that the drums instructions where they say, okay, learn drums? You okay? What you do is you beat on the snare, and that's your homework for the night. Next week we'll do the boom boom, and then while
Yeah,
you're
they
doing
like
that,
add
is that how you
parts
do it?
in. I start with like I listen to Opeth a lot. And they have a couple of songs. They actually have a whole album that was all acoustic stuff. So I'm like, all right, I'll put a tempo click track on. And I just try to play slower on my own, get it, and then I try to play along with the song. Um, I, it's hard for me to explain how I teach myself to do stuff because some of it just kind of comes and other stuff I have to fight for, but it always gets there. Um, it was like what got me into music in the first place was just it was like a natural ability to hear something and correlate sound to manifesting it physically on an instrument. Um, Walked by Jacob's Music when I was a kid, and I was just like, oh, let me look in there, and then I go inside, and there's a song on the radio, and I just sit down on the piano and start playing it, and everyone's like, huh? Have you ever played anything before? And I'm like, no. And they're like, do you want to? Because you should. And I'm like, I guess. So the learning process for me, it's more just like I just do it until I get it kind of thing. I use a lot of click tracks. Drums, like I said, it's the most difficult for me. I do a lot of editing. I do use my DAW more for that than I do my electric kit. So and that's fine because it's when you're doing everything, it's not easy to do that. Teaching yourself stuff like that can be difficult and time consuming too. So one day we'll get there where I'll be like, yes, I can answer these questions better and actually play the drums without needing to adjust things. But for now, that's more my most recent because I started back when I was 24 when I was in bands and had kits here, and I could mess around and I'd be able to play some of the songs because I'm familiar with them. But it was never like a pressing issue up until recently. Because I'd hurt my arm back in 21. My right arm got a couple muscle tears, ligament tears. I fractured my shoulder socket.
Wow.
So for a majority of it, it was you have to program drums because you don't have a choice. I was lucky I could still play guitar and bass. But I will get there. It's
But that
just
shouldn't really
time.
bother you when you think of that the drummer for Def Leppard lost his arm in an accident. He still plays drums, and it's
Yeah, but
specially
I'm not that good.
designed. Well, still, I mean, like I've seen people born without arms that play the guitar with their feet. So I'm like, okay, well, I can
Nah.
handle this. um, I thought you were going to say violin was the most difficult because you have by your neck, and then you're playing it, looking at the music, and you're stroking it one, and you have to figure out where it's stroking on the strings. But with the bass
Mhm.
guitar, you're actually looking at where your fingers are. That's why I thought the violin would have been difficult.
No, I kind of just had a weird natural gravitation towards stringed instruments. Stringed instruments for me are very, I guess, easy to pick up. It's kind of like a natural feel. So it's like, you mess around with a little bit, you get the basis, you figure out what position your arm needs to be in to hit what strings. And then, from there, it's just like, oh, okay. My first time playing was probably, I was just messing around. I wasn't even serious. And I was, oh, let me see that. And then I'm like, and they're like, oh, you're playing it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, let me play this then. But, but yeah, no, string instruments are good. I mean, percussion's, it's different when you're behind a drum set as to when you're sitting at your desk or in your car and like playing drums on something, because like when you have to have a specific limb do a specific sound, as opposed to, oh, I could just, smack my hands around and, as long as the beats sound on time, we're good. Um, so that's where it gets difficult, and where I think it's the most difficult is because switching positions, having to do it within a certain fraction of a time, uh, it's something you have to be very, very familiar with something uh, to be able to do it and to make it fluid. It's very easy to get off time or think you're on time or be close enough and you're still off by just that little bit. It just doesn't sound right. And you got to go back and either redo it or just edit it and move that one piece over a little bit. Um, and that's why that for me is the most difficult, especially, with the arm injury that had to happen at the time. Was just like, I can't, the strength wasn't fully there, so I didn't have the speed there, so the accuracy went away as well. Um, so that is definitely in my life been the most difficult instrument for me to try to get down and master.
Okay, three things now. Now, considering the bass guitar, can you play the bass guitar blindfolded, and can you play the drums blindfolded? Which one is easier for you to play blindfolded?
I'd probably have a better time with the bass, because guitar I could do without looking for the most part. It's more of a feeling thing. So I would imagine the bass would be similar, because, like I said, stringed instruments, drums blindfolded, I'd probably knock the set over.
So I take it you're not the type of bass player that can take the bass player and play it behind like this, eh? Behind your head.
No, I've never been one for the fancy trick stuff. I've never tried that. I
Well, I
always
know
had
this
the
other
fear.
guy had like a 6 neck guitar, and he actually had a video of him playing all 6 necks. What do you think of those? Is it for aesthetic reasons, or is it because people just like 6 neck guitars?
I don't
What is the
know
guy
what
from
that
Cheap
is.
Trick? I think.
That's just crazy talent right there. That's what that is. Are you talking about like where it's doubled and then there's three on each side, like the
I'm
Michelangelo
talking about
Badio?
a bass guitar with 5 necks. It's like, and you're playing one neck like this, the other neck like this, and you're playing all of them at the same time.
Oh
I
yeah, yeah.
posted
No,
that video on my
that's
on my.
sheer talent.
Yeah,
That is
you're
just
not there
sheer
yet.
talent. I mean, it's not something I've ever really tried, because, like I said, to me, it's like I like just the emotion and feel that comes from playing something. I'm not a very flashy person. I'm very introverted. So to me, it's just like, yeah, I'll just play normally.
So what about trumpets and tubas and French horns? You have no interest in that because playing the clarinet, you could probably learn that too. I guess you have no interest in these
I've
percussions.
I've never tried them. I mean, when I was younger, yeah, they stood out a little bit. I don't know why I never went that route. honestly. Because yeah, I guess clarinet is similar because with the plunger plug style keys,
And the
but
flute.
yeah, but it's yeah, it never really jumped out at me too much. Maybe the tones, I do have kind of sensitivity to like high frequency tone, so it might have been too much for me at the time, and probably still is sound
Yeah.
wise. But I mean, they're beautiful instruments. I mean, it would be fun to learn how to play them at some point, but it was just never
Yeah.
anything that stood out as a necessity,
Yeah, I saw this America's Got Talent. Her name was Mia Morris, and she was a multi instrumentalist, and she used loopers, and wow, she good.
Oh,
So
that's
young
cool.
too. Yeah, so young. Um, so yeah, and then you started the endeavor of recording and producing songs. What do you think is your how do you create a song? What's your song process?
It's very, very weird and unorthodox. So again, with the stringed instruments thing and that being kind of like my expression point, primarily, I literally will start with guitars. So I'll write a rhythm out. I'll write riffs. I'll piece them together. I'll get everything sectioned and organized, and I'll record it, and then I'll throw leads over it in certain parts, do harmonies with leads in certain parts, and then I'll sit there and I'll listen to it for a couple of days, and I'll see how it makes me feel. I'll try to feel what kind of emotions I feel like came from it when I was recording it. What drove me to use these sounds, these chord structures, and whatnot to get what I was trying to feel across. And then from there, I'll put the bass on it. Then after I get that done, same thing. I'll listen to it for like a day, and then that's when the drums come in. Okay, now I got a basic feel for what emotion I want to put in this, how I want it to come across. So now I can go with what tempo, and what kind of feel the drums have. And then once that's done, I'll add, if I want to put piano or synths on it, I like to use strings, like I said, even though it's synthetic, I'm like, you still got to do it. Um, Organs, ocarinas, stuff that's like more medieval and Viking type theme. And then from there, that's I do vocals last. I will sit there, I will listen to it in its entirety as an instrumental, and just focus on what I'm feeling from how it sounds. And then that's when I just start writing vocals. And that can take a day or two. I try to be mindful of not being repetitive, not keeping a similar cadence to other stuff I've done, which does happen sometimes, especially a lot of my albums are concept albums. The one I'm working on now is actually a continuation of the first one I released. So, some things do correlate back, and go back and forth, but I try to keep it, fresh and original. Um, but I do also touch back on stuff like the last song in the Havamal album. Um, the ending riff for that came from the acoustic song that was before the last song, and I took that and made it heavier. And then the first song in the new album, it ends the same way with the same riff, the same drum beat. It's literally just played with subtle differences, like instead of going up to a major or something, I take off the major with the A chord, and it sounds different, but it sounds similar. And it's like, oh wait, I've heard that before. And then you go back and you're like, oh, okay, I see what he did there. So I try to make everything connect
How
in
does it make
some
you
fashion.
How does it make you feel when you pick up an instrument, specifically the bass guitar? Do you feel like a totally different person? Do you just like get all my emotions out? This is good for my mental health. How does it make you feel when you suddenly do what you need to do on your bass guitar? Then you put it down and you're wiping your forehead of all the sweat. Do you go, I can now live my life? Or do you like, this is not working?
It depends on how hard what I'm trying to do is. A lot of the time, it does end up being relief. I'll get it tracked, I'll get it recorded, I'll get it the way I like it, and then I could sit back and listen to this and see how it came out, and then you do that, and it's just like, yes, that's what I was looking for. It doesn't always happen. You got to track things sometimes hundreds of times, but at the end of it, when it works out and it's said and done, yeah, it does give a nice feeling of relief, because it's like, all right, cool, that's what I was going for, and it worked.
Yeah, I'm a tenor. Singing actually kind of releases a lot of anger, a lot of frustration from me. Do I just take a song, and whether it's an Elton John song, Billy Joel song, or maybe Imagine Dragons, and trying to learn how to sing Nessun Dorma? That's like a mountain that I'm trying to climb. That's a difficult song because you do your rolling R's, and I love Italian music, classical music. So I suppose, Kevin, that like your approach to composing a new instrumental. So do you have to like, sorry, do you have to try to understand the artist's preference and personality, and then compose accordingly?
Yeah, I guess, because like I said, I try to keep it where it's like, I mean, the band name kind of boxes me into a emotional concept, so to speak. Not to an 100% extent though, because there are parts where, yeah, it's somber, it gets very, sad and still, but then you do hear glimmers of hope in certain accents on certain chords with leads and everything like that. So yeah, I do kind of have to almost tear myself down a little bit to get what I want out of it. Almost like taking a scar and ripping it open again just to watch it bleed for a couple of seconds so you can
Mm.
remember, you know. Um, and then you get great music from that. It's somewhat taxing at times, but for the most part, like I said, it's just the initial point of doing it that's rough, and then when you're done, you're like, all right, I feel better now. I feel way better now.
Yeah, I can imagine how much better a person feels when they do music. Now, when you're working with someone who writes randomly only when the so-called inspiration strikes, you get yourself if you get yourself a very flat sounding beat, um, do you work on that beat until it's perfect? Like, for instance, one of your songs, which you just, um, I like this, but what if someone says, it's not done yet, or I don't like it, or you write music just for you. So if you like it, you like it. Doesn't matter what anybody else says.
That's It depends on the song. That's true and not true. Because I do it for myself, but I also do it because maybe someone else is going through something similar to what I'm going through, and this might help them. So I am very OCD. I'm very picky. I do try to get it to sound as perfect as I can. But if there's something that I see that does have potential, I won't scrap it. I will sit there and I'll listen to it like for a day or so, and I'll be all right. How can I improve this? And I'll ask people. I do ask people. I ask people in the band together group. I ask people in my personal life. I'm like, yo, take a listen to this. Tell me what you think. What needs to change? Like, what sounds off? Like, what do you get from this? And I do take constructive criticism. I try to do it as much as I can. Because hey, if this sounds fine to me, but if you as the listener were listening to this, what would turn you off about this? Like, is this part too low? Can you not hear the vocals enough, or the guitar is too loud? That kind of stuff. So I do have, my friends do give me good advice, and tell me what they honestly think as someone that would be listening. um so it's rare that I do just scrap something. I think I've done it maybe once or twice where I was just like, no, not happening. um and one of those actually did turn into a song that I'm in the process of writing now, um called Rebirth. And it's funny because now that I have this one, the part that I didn't like in the first version of it that I scrapped months ago, it just sounds better. So sometimes maybe not scrapping it all together, but just taking it, being like, nope, got to start fresh, but let's walk away and think about this for a little bit first, does kind of help too.
Yeah, I understand that. When we go back to the lyrics part, when you write lyrics, what do you think makes a good song? Is it the melody? Is it the lyrics? Is it from? Do you write songs according to experience?
Yeah, lyrically, it's if you look at the first album, the Have a Male album, that was like a triple metaphor, so to speak.
You talk about have. How do you pronounce that?
I think it's Have a Male.
Have a Mel. Yeah.
I'm not. I started learning Swedish and I stopped, and I want to get back into it. I'm rusty with the accent marks on the letters,
Yeah.
but with
What does
that
that
one,
mean? Have a Mel.
that was a book. It was called The Words of the Wise. It was supposed to be like uh sayings and teachings from Odin. And so that started as I started looking into some folklore and some history, and I found this story of a Viking raid that happened in England on the island of Lindisfarne in 796 AD, I believe it was. Um, and I was like, I kind of want to tell that story. So that album became that, and the way I took Have Mail for it for the title was it was like Odin being like, okay, you guys need to go do this because they're opposing, your beliefs and your way of life and this and that. And then I just kind of took that story, I kind of made it my own interpretation, and I created this character that was basically the tormented version of myself. And I put him in the main spotlight. And it just kind of fits with some of the stuff that I've been going through in life, with the deaths and things like that I've dealt with since I was a kid, to where it also fit with the story I created of it. He's going with his brothers to go to this island and to go do what they do, and they get attacked by a demonic ship on the way there.
Wow.
Everybody dies around him. He's left standing by himself. Shipwrecked, floats on debris, gets to where he's going, meets up with the rest of his brothers. They do what they're doing. And then there's another betrayal, more death. Again, last one.
Sounds like an episode of Xena.
Yeah, kind of, huh? I mean, same time frame, I guess. Similar, yeah. But so that was kind of where that came from. And like I said, it was a lot of my personal experiences and some of the deaths that I went through that were very close to me and hit me pretty hard, like Combination at Frigid Dawn. It was actually the first song I wrote, and it was a song I wrote when I had a very significant death back in 2013.
Death of your brother, I believe, wasn't it?
No, that was back in 1998 or 99.
Oh,
That
wow.
No, this was my girlfriend at the time. Yeah. So that kind of was what started, the rest of it, and me wanting to make this all kind of happen. And so that song was about this raid and how everything just went awry and everyone dies and it's just this massacre, and it correlates with what I went through and how I felt going through what I went through. That whole album was, I mean, if you sat down and listened to it, you could hear the emotions. They're just all over the place, up and down. And it kind of tied in a little bit with, because like I said, that was around pandemic time. So that did also tie in with what was going on in the world at that time as well. Like you said, it started to feel like a little bit of a dictatorship at a point there. And that was another way I dealt with that too, was, all right, let me make this music and I'm going to, you know, say what I say and see if I get in trouble or not. But having multiple interpretations, I guess, helps. And, you know, being vaguely indirect but direct at the same time, you know, seems to, because then it's open for interpretation. It doesn't matter what you think I meant, because if that's what you feel from it, then that's what works for you. That works, you know.
But I don't understand why it's Swedish though, because you have another album called Foray Visdomen, uh, and then I have an album demo from 2021. So yeah, it's you consider yourself death metal, I guess. Do you think there's a difference between heavy metal and death metal?
I don't know if I would consider it death metal. We're getting into this. This is always a fun one. So the metal community has so many different subgenres that we don't even like it. It's ridiculous. I would
Hip hop
consider
metal.
that might be something I end up doing in the future. I'm not even kidding about that. I'm talking to a couple of friends and they're like, yo, we want you to do growls and throw some guitars on some beats. And I'm like, why not? Let's do it. But I consider it more melodic metal, based just with the amount of harmonies, the amount of stuff going on. To me, death metal is more like traditional American 90s 2000s death metal, where it's just simple riffs, simple drum riffs, you know, blast beats, two-step beats, stuff like that. Whereas with this is more an actual composition, and it's kind of progressive too. So I guess it would be like progressive melodic. I never really tried to classify myself, because it's like there's too much to put it into a box like that, and then there's too many different genres to where it's like, all right, I'm 12 things. So but if I had to, I would definitely say like progressive melodic metal would be what I would classify it as, because it's heavy, yes, but there's a lot of it that isn't heavy also, and there's some folk thrown in there also. So it's just a very interesting blend of whatever the hell is going on in my brain at the time. And Swedish, it's a beautiful language. Like I grew up listening to some of my favorite bands like Scar Symmetry, Soilwork, Opeth, Solution 45, which is the singer from Scar Symmetry. And there's a lot of stuff that they do where they will have Swedish vocals, and I'm like, you know, that's a really beautiful language, and it sounds great over metal music. And that was one of the things where back in 21, during the pandemic, I was, you know, trying to learn Swedish, and Tom just kind of took that over, and it wasn't really logical at the time. And I will probably get back into it, because Havamel originally was supposed to have a Swedish version, but I didn't want to do it without knowing the language, because I didn't want to butcher it. You know?
Would you consider? So I noticed there's one group that you totally missed was ABBA. They're a Swedish group.
Yes, they are Swedish. Yeah. My dad listened to them when I was growing up. So yeah, I know a lot of their songs, because he was always playing. And my dad was always like that. He was always playing music, all different genres. It was never one thing. He would go all over the place, every different region of the world. So you know, you subconsciously have those influences as well.
Yeah. Let me give you some bands, and you tell me whether they're yes or no, if they're heavy metal, death metal, or not metal. Okay, Quiet Riot.
That's hair metal.
Black Sabbath.
I would say heavy metal, because based on the time when that was the origination of, you know.
Def Leppard.
That's a tough one, because that's like, it's not hair metal though. So I guess it's 80s metal. They're heavy. We'll do heavy metal.
How about AC/DC?
See, to me, they're more classic rock.
Really? No,
Yeah.
AC/DC I consider metal.
like they're heavy, but they're classically heavy. I don't know. It's just my opinion, but to me they're classically heavy. Not really. I don't see them as like as metal. It's more rock to me. But then again, with the amount of stuff that I listen to that's so heavy that people would think the world is ending, I guess that's why.
What do you think of Metallica?
Oh
Is that
God, I
metal?
grew up on them. Yeah, they're metal. I love Metallica. I started listening to them when my brother, the one that passed, he would come over and babysit me. And because my mom was a nurse, my dad was an EMT. So they, there were nights where it was like no one was there. So he would come and watch me. And instead of being like, all right, you got to go to bed, he'd be like, all right, let's go watch Headbangers Ball. And like Metallica was one of his favorite bands, and it stuck with me. And I took that, and they were actually a really big influence, you know, going forward with all of this, learning how to play their stuff. And, in high school, and you just go there and you start playing Orion, and everyone's like, oh, wow, that's awesome. And it's just, I love them. They're great.
Well, I've noticed that Motorhead was considered to be heavy metal, but I don't think Motorhead is metal at all. What are your thoughts?
It's, That's another one where it's like it's more rock with metal elements. Like they're heavy. I did have the pleasure of seeing them live once, and they're heavy. They're heavy, but certain songs are heavy, and then you have other songs, and yeah, it's more like rock or not classic rock, but it's more like heavy rock.
So what do you think? Okay, so now in the band together, you have a group called Grim Rock. Do you think they're heavy metal?
Oh, Grim is fucking awesome. Sorry for the language. Grim is awesome. He is kind of both. I would say he's kind of both.
Okay, I never heard that before. You're either heavy metal or death metal. I didn't realize that. You mean they're both death and heavy metal?
I'm sorry. I thought you were saying rock my apologies. I misunderstood
Mhm.
the question.
No, we're
um,
still on the heavy
the
metal or
heavy
death metal.
or
Like,
death metal. I would say heavy metal.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what about Sepsis? You consider that to be a heavy metal band?
Yeah.
Wow, good, excellent. Um, so your singles, Eternal Forlorn and In Extremis, how long do you think it took you to write these songs? Do you have a
Um,
certain agenda, like I have to write this in a certain amount of time, or
I also get the random burst of creativity. Um, like the Eternal Forlorn single was a really bad night. Um, like I found out someone close to me had passed because again that's the theme of everything here, unfortunately. And I didn't know what was going on. I knew something was off. Like you ever get those kind of intuitions where you could just feel that something bad happened, but you're not sure what it is.
yeah?
And it was kind of one of those things. And that probably took me 8 hours.
Oh wow.
In Extremis was in the midst of the end of that pandemic feeling, and right before my arm injury. So that was I dyed my hair black, and I had a very bad adverse reaction to the hair dye.
Oh
So that
wow.
song took a little longer because allergic reaction and everything, so it's hard to sing and do stuff like that. And the energy even to play guitar wasn't there. That one probably took me, I want to say, a month, if I'm not mistaken, 3 weeks to a month, to just piece everything together and try to get everything sounding the way I wanted it to sound, which didn't happen anyway. That's why I re-released the album this past month. But yeah, that was that was probably one of the hardest songs to write because there's a lot going on in that. I mean, I've got 5 guitar layers playing simultaneously, you know, at a time throughout most of it. So that was hard to manage and kind of mix and get everything to sound balanced and go forward with that. And the lyrics were a little difficult for that one too, because that was more the anger and fear of what I was going through and, you know, what was going on in the world and what was going to come from it, you know?
Ozzy Osbourne wrote a song called Dreamer, which is not a heavy metal song. It's a
No.
beautiful, beautiful song.
Yeah.
Have you heard it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I know
really
exactly
good.
what you're talking about. It's a great song. Yeah. And that's
So
because you could do all of that with metal. That's metal is a versatile thing. Metal is actually a very helpful genre for mental health also. You know, a lot of people look at it and they're like, "Oh, that's angry," and you're just there at an angry asshole person. And no, it's a way of not feeling alone because, like I said, all right, someone else went through something that makes them feel this way too, or it captures that and it releases it so you don't physically have to, you know? So instead of taking the emotion and then reacting to it yourself, you just put on some heavy songs and it takes care of itself almost, at least for me. You know, it gets me through. It can change your emotions in a positive way. It could change them in a bad way too, depending on how far down into that emotion you are. Or it could pull you out of it. It just depends on where you're at mentally and, you know, what the feel behind the song is. But it's just something that you could do so much with, you know. I mean, to be able to do the type of vocals I do clean wise in metal is, it's like, who does that, you know? So it's different, and that's what sticks out about it to me too, is that it's something that's so totally different that you just don't expect it, you know?
wow, so passionate. What makes you so passionate about music? Is it the sound? Is it because you can write your own lyrics? Is it just the emotional feeling you get from it, or just because you like it, I want to pursue it?
um that's an interesting question that I don't think I've ever really thought about to a full extent. So I the I think you're onto something with the sound aspect. I'm autism spectrum, high functioning, and I am very sound and sight oriented. So yeah, the sounds, and I think that's what draws me to guitar so much too. Is just the different sound spectrums and the tones you can get and blend together from it. Um, I and it's not just the emotion or being able to get through emotions or anything like that. It's just I love doing it. I feel like I have to, if that makes any sense. It's like I'm supposed to do this. And that's kind of what keeps me going about it. And, you know, having a decent amount of talent to be able to like make it become a physical thing, I guess helps too. But it's just being able to, I don't know. I can't really answer that directly. There's just so much emotionally that ties into it, even spiritually. It feels like a calling, you know?
Do you feel that sound? You said the sound makes you like discolors. There's something called synesthesia, um, which is where sound becomes color.
Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that, yeah, there's a different type of autism out there. There's Asperger's, but one of them is synesthesia, and it has something to do with sound, like sound, color of sound, which is
Mhm.
amazing. So would you feel that when you're playing music, that the sound you hear is more like a color. So you're more drawn towards red, the anger sound, or you drawn more towards the blue, which is a colder, or black, which is like emptiness. Well, I consider, I know I say that because I consider a lot of heavy metal. It's just for Tool, for instance, like in Rob Zombie, when when a lead singer of a heavy metal band walks up to the microphone and all that comes out of their mouth is like that, you're like,
Yeah.
what? That's not a love song, yes.
No, it's, I mean, for me, it's balance.
Yeah.
It's definitely balance because it does play into life, in a sense of life is balance. You can't go too much to one side or the other because you'll get stuck or you'll fall off. You have to kind of stay in the middle. So for me, I I don't like being like the angry side of it. That's why after that first album, even my heavier stuff is a little more reserved. Like I said, that album was a lot of pain that needed to come out, and that was its sole purpose. Um, I tend to go more for the black and blue side of things. Like I'd rather it be a little empty with a little bit of hope, or just this, I guess,
Mm.
beautiful display of emotion, whether it be somber or joyful. Um, but like you said, just the amount of passion there kind of has to do with it as well. But I definitely I don't like doing the anger side too much. That's more for the Nocturnal Terror project. Is I get a little, into politics with that, and I try to reserve that more for that. You know, for the other stuff, it's more just emotions, raw emotions, trying to get through it. So yeah, I would definitely say black and blue for that is what I would
Wow.
steer more towards. But I like to keep a balance. You have to have some anger in there because you have to acknowledge that to be able to realize, okay, we can get past this, and then you could bring the other stuff into it.
When you say black and blue, that's what happens when someone punches you in the eye. You say, I beat him to a pulp, I beat him black and blue. More like emotional like that guy.
Yeah,
Emotional
emotional
damage.
damage. Yeah, that guy's
you know?
great.
And, yeah, and there's a lot of hurt in there. I can imagine a lot of your music is displayed probably because of the people you lost, including your girlfriend. And I can imagine someone who's really close to you would be your brother.
Yeah,
I can imagine what was going through your head because I know I lost my parents through cancer and other people who have died. It's you just have to move on, and it's hard. It's always going to be with you. The death of your brother. It's been almost like over 20 years now, and I'm pretty
yeah,
sure that if he was alive today, he'd probably be not only doing probably metal with you, but he would be helping you write these songs as well. Like you'll be
yeah,
another Noel Gallagher and Liam Gallagher from Oasis. So and
yeah,
I can
probably.
imagine you missing your brother because this is for you, So
Yeah, yeah. Actually, one of the guitars I have is a 1970s Memphis Chipson uh, that I'm still working on, but it was actually his guitar, and I'm trying to get that going. I think I got to put a new string nut on it and
wow.
space it differently, but that's almost done. But yeah, so no, a lot of it is because of him, and I have another brother that's alive, and he's started doing this, and life took over. He had a kid, and I'm just like, all
Mm.
right, I guess it's up to me, huh? And I just, like I said, I feel like I got to do it.
So I guess the green has something to do with your emotional.
Oh,
Um,
what for the room?
yeah.
No, no. This is I'm a huge comic book and superhero nerd. So my favorite villain is the Joker.
Oh
I love
wow.
Bat. I love Batman also. So this originated as a Joker themed room. Before I turned it into my music studio, it was like my video game room and hangout room and everything like that. So I had that in here. That was where that theme came from. And
Wow.
then I just converted it. And I'm like, it kind of fits because with the angry parts of the song, I'm like, yeah, it works. We'll keep it.
Wow. Okay, I was just discussing it with someone else when talked about their favorite Joker. Who's your favorite Joker? Is it Heath Ledger, Jared Leto, Cesar Romero, or is it Joaquin Phoenix? Who's your favorite Joker?
Okay, so if we're talking uh Jared Leto should just stick with music, in my opinion. I did not like that Joker at all. That is my
No,
least favorite.
no.
Um, great musician, great singer, not a very good actor. But hey, more power to him for trying. You know, you never know until you try. Um, I would have to say my favorite would be Jack Nicholson.
Jack
Um,
Nicholson.
if we're talking movies, yeah, that come on. He was the best. It was the best character. It was the best actor for that character, for that, like, 50s gangster kind of feel. Like, he just, it was pulled off perfectly. There was a point I used to watch that movie on repeat, that original Batman, and it's just great. He was actually hilarious as a psychopathic killer. Like, like the puns were there, the one-liners, everything. It was just perfect. Like, even the facial reactions to stuff that was going on in the background. Like, you'd see him and he's just, yeah, you'd look over and he's like, all right, noted, and then moves on. Like, it was just the subtlety in how he did everything was great. Joaquin
Yeah,
Phoenix also is the second runner up, but that was
hmm
a different type of Joker. That was a different type of movie. That was also a very good movie that I watched that probably twice in a row when it first came out. And I was just like, wow, that was a performance, like, and a half. That was a good performance.
yeah. I grew up with the Batman TV series of Cesar Romero was Joker, and then it was more like a flashy kind of sweet little sugary type with Adam West. Then you got to the darker one with Michael Keaton and Jack
Yeah.
Nicholson, and that was, oh my goodness, that's a really mean evil Joker. Nothing like Cesar Romero. Probably would
No.
kill the Cesar Romero Joker. And then
Yeah.
suddenly the Heath Ledger one came out, and I'm like talking about craziness there. And
Yeah.
then when I saw the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, I said, "Oh, this is a pretty good Joker." And then at the end, I don't know if anybody out there has seen the Joker. I don't want to ruin it for you, but he did something at the end to the talk show host, brilliantly played by Al Pacino. I'm sorry, now, oh, Robert De Niro. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, and but I'm not really into the Marvel movies. I'm more into like I saw all 9 seasons of The Flash on Netflix and Supergirl. I'm a Supergirl and I'm a Flash person, but I don't like any of the others like Batman because they can't get a Batman or Superman movie right, except with Christopher Reeve, and nobody's been able to come close to
Mm-mm.
his
No.
version. I don't know. I'm just not
No,
interested
I
in these
agree.
things.
I agree. I don't like the, like, don't get me wrong, like the Dark Knight series, with Heath Ledger and Christian Bale. Like,
Yeah,
I, see, and that's another thing, and maybe it's nostalgic because that was around the time I was born. But again, even when it comes down to, if you were to ask me what the best Batman was in my book, Michael Keaton, that's not a question. Um, but like, there are differences because it falls into with the different timelines, and it's like they're so totally different as people. Like, but you're right though. It's like it's difficult to find an actor that pulls it off right. I mean, I remember when they had Ben Affleck and they were like, Batman, Ben Affleck, and I'm like, how's that going to work? But
yeah, I
okay,
know.
let's And I went and I'm like, it's all right, I guess. But it was just weird because you don't think of that when you think of Ben Affleck at all. So it was really weird.
I like Batman when I watched it, the one from the 50s, George Reeves. I watched that when I came home from school. And also, Christopher Reeve was the best Superman.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, but after that, Brandon Ruth and all those others, they couldn't do it for me. They're not really good. It's sort of like Superman and Batman. You can't get it right. But,
Yeah.
gee, wow, was I really mistaking Christopher Reeve for Batman? What's wrong with me? See, I don't know any of this. But the Flash, definitely. I love Grant Gustin's version of the Flash. I used to watch it in John Wesley Shipp, the TV series. I used to be interested in these things like Green Lantern, all them. I had a big
Yeah.
book of all these origins of superheroes and
Oh,
Silver
nice.
Surfer. Um, and then the Avengers movies came out, and I don't know. I'm just there's too much of it out there. Now they
Well,
have
yeah,
new ones.
there is so much. I mean, you go on Disney Plus and you go to look for a Marvel movie, and it's just like the whole timeline. There's like over 30 of them, and I'm like, all right, where do I even start? You know, but I mean, yeah, there's so much. And DC's even starting to do so much too now. I do like the Flash series also. I liked Green Arrow also. That was good.
Mm, I
Um,
wasn't into that.
no. Did you see the new Flash movie yet?
Actually, Grant Gustin went forward and said that why didn't they cast him in the movie? Because he played the Flash for 9 seasons. Why you have this
Right.
guy? You know, there's
Yeah,
a
that
lot of
threw me off
controversy on that.
too.
Did you see the new movie?
I did. I did.
Did you like it?
It was good, yes. I
Mm.
was also surprised. I'm like, why did they switch the actor? But okay. That's just Hollywood does what Hollywood does, and we just, you either watch it or you don't. But no, it was a good movie. It did get very emotional, actually. I don't want to give anything away, but it was intense, and it made a lot of references to a lot of things in the DC timeline and the whole DC universe, and it was really cool. I will give it that. It was a really good movie.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not really into that, but my favorite superheroes are definitely Supergirl and who else? I like Spider Man.
Yeah,
I'm not
Spider
sure
Man's
about
cool.
Tom Holland's version of Spider Man, but I do like Tobey Maguire's version.
Yeah, me too.
But I'm
Those are the
but I'm
original movies to me, and I liked the
yeah.
cartoon from the '90s. I
Oh
watched that
really?
all the time growing up. Yeah, that and the X-Men cartoon from the '90s. Those were really good
Those were
cartoons.
those were fun when you walk home from school to watch. Like I used to watch Wonder Woman. I love Wonder Woman with Linda Carter. Nobody else is Wonder Woman to me. Even that what's that girl's name? No, I'm but I'm not the type of person to buy all these superhero figures and comic books, and it's like it's too much money because you have a comic book you want, like, unless you have the first Superman comic from Action Comics, which is worth way over 100,000 or more,
Yeah.
then no, I'm not going to buy comic books and save them in hopes that 60 years from now I can sell them for quite a
No,
large
I agree
price.
with you. I
Yeah.
agree with you on that. I started getting into like getting them and reading them and collecting them, and then it's like, you miss things, and then you're missing volumes, and then it's just no. With my spectrum disorder and my OCD, I'm like, I can't do this because I'm going to get frustrated, and then I'm just going to waste too much money trying to complete everything, and then yeah, what's for what? For the happenstance that it may be worth something later. Like I'll just, you can read stuff anywhere. You could find it online, and there are stories out there. Sorry, you might hear my cat going crazy in the background.
Oh, that's your cat. Oh, I'm thinking, is that
Yeah,
Cat?
no,
Wow.
that's mine. She likes to come in and scream at me while I'm doing stuff.
Wow, that's quite a good high definition stereo, because I hear your cat way off over here like it's coming from outside.
Oh
And that's your
wow,
cat. Wow. It's
that's
amazing.
funny. Yeah,
So
she's
if
got a good set of pipes.
if there was a heavy metal superhero, what would be, if you were the heavy metal superhero, what would be your superpower?
Oh God. I don't know.
Shooting bullets from a
uh
bass guitar? Dring, 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 dring.
Violin archery. I think
Probably.
that'd be cool. Um, Yeah, we'll go with that. We'll go with violin archery.
That's cool. If I had a superpower, I would just suddenly like snap my fingers, become invisible. Or a
That's a
second
cool
one I
one
would
too.
is become like that guy Manimal back in the 80s was with Simon Corkindale. He was like he could turn himself into any animal.
Oh, okay. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Snap my fingers and I'd be like
And then just
a tiger or
yeah, like a
something.
dog or something.
Yeah. But if I was a bobcat, don't call me Bob. So, what do you think of love songs? How do you write a heavy metal love song? Like, I don't think Dreamer is a love song by Ozzy Osbourne, but
No, I
is
wouldn't
is
consider that. Um,
so,
I don't know. I guess because most of my I'm not the person to ask on that given what I've gone through.
mm,
Because like my for me it's like that Eternal Forlorn single kind of um touched on that whole situation actually with what had happened with my girlfriend. Hence the chorus lyrics.
mm-hmm.
Um and to me it's like pain. So
Oh
it's like, but
wow.
that's such quite the opposite of it. So like when I write something like that, that does kind of have like that love emotion in it. It does come from a place of pain, um, but not entirely at the same time. Like it's weird. It's kind of hard to describe. Let me think about this for a second.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, because yeah, 'cause you think about the pain of it, and then you also remember the good times. So it's like to me, it's like reflecting, but it's you say how you feel, and I try to not be direct. I try to
Hmm.
kind of make it a not a metaphor, but just like a play on words, kind of. Uh, I don't know. I'm a very weird person when it comes to like direct emotion, um, which is weird as a musician because it's one of those things where I'll start playing and then it's like, oh yeah, listen to this. No, don't listen to this. Like, so it's like, which one is it? I don't know. Um, but yeah, so I don't know if I've ever really fully written like a love song like that. But anything that has had that emotion tied into it for sure has come from like a place of either pain or fear of future loss of something similar like that. Um, there's a lot of uncertainty that goes into that. So it ends up being like this huge ball of just every emotion coming through at once, um, with I guess what love being the initial intent behind it, and then it just gets out of hand uh, for me. So yeah, that's probably the best way I could describe that.
Are you the type of person where you or your brother or yourself would go to your other late brother's grave and sit there with a bass guitar and play music for him? I've
I
seen that.
would. I've because he we're my family we're originally from New York, so he's up in New York, and it's not like it's that far. I'm not exactly sure where he is. To be honest, I'd have to find out from my other brother, which is difficult to do, difficult to get in touch with him sometimes. He has a lot going on. But yeah, no, that would be something I would definitely do. And just sit there with like an acoustic guitar or 12 string or something, or a bass or anything, just bring some kind of instrument and just sit there and meditate and, just play what comes to feeling.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that, my friend. So
No.
when you no, when you create music, do you create it for yourself or do you create it for your fans?
I try to do a bit of both, like I said, because I do want it to, if someone else is going through something similar, for it to help them. So I try to, I stick true to what I want from it and what I need from creating it and putting it out there. But I also like to keep in mind what people would want to hear, how they would want something approached. I do try to evolve like that as I go. To where if someone, like, if I get less response on one thing and then someone else, oh, I really like what you did there. Okay, I'm gonna try to do more of that then. Gotcha. So it does go with both sides. I definitely do it for everybody at the same time, you know.
So are you constantly writing every day then, like from when you get up in the morning to when you go to bed at night? Or do you do like a day where you just got to take a mental break and you just go out and do your thing and do something non-musical? Or are you doing
Um,
music every single day, 24/7?
it's not. It is and it isn't every single day. I do take breaks. I do, like you said, you gotta take care of yourself.
Hmm.
Um, and but I do find myself, I'm always thinking about something. I'm always thinking about melodies. I always have melodies in my head. Um, if I come up with like a cool, catchy something I think is catchy lyric wise, I'll at least write it down and then like go back and touch back on it later. But I do take breaks. I do this a lot though. I do play every day, whether it's writing or practicing or recording something. But I am usually at some point throughout the day I have an instrument of some sort in my hand. Um,
But also you
because
do everything with a headset on, so it's not like your neighbors are saying, "Shut up." You're not doing too loud. You do it kind of to yourself.
that's unfortunately sometimes not true. When it comes
Oh.
to bass, I plug into my interface directly. My acoustic, I could plug into my interface directly. My guitar, I mic through a combo amp, and vocals, I mic, obviously. So yeah, when I'm doing the stuff with the miking, it's not as bad because I do have the headset on. Uh, but the amp's loud, and
Mm.
my recording times are usually, I wait for the house to be quiet and everyone to be asleep. So it's usually midnight and I'm surprised I haven't gotten complaints yet. I'll just say that. um, but I try to be mindful. I try to be quiet where I can. If it's like a school night or something, I won't go too loud because, neighbors and they have kids and whatnot. But summertime, I'm a little less restricted, you know. But
Is your studio there acoustically challenged, or is it perfect? Like, if you
it's
needed that acoustics, would you create one in the studio?
it's weird because I've done absolutely nothing to this room soundproof wise. I actually took the door off for giving me more space, so it doesn't open inward and I could put like something over there by the amp. But no, I've not soundproofed anything. I don't soundproof anything when I record. I have, like, the little foam backing
Hmm.
semicircle for vocals. But I mean, there's even points when it's nice out, I'll have the windows open while I'm tracking guitar, and I just go into the program. I just put a very small noise gate on it, and it seems to do the trick. Like, nothing gets into this room sound wise, but everything gets out, kind of. And I mean, I haven't had any problems yet with it. So it was kind of cool. It was like, I guess I picked the perfect room.
This is great, my friend. What a great conversation we're having here. I really appreciate you on the podcast. I really appreciate the opportunity to interview you and Fossegrim Records, Kevin Corr. I'm thinking when I'm looking at Corr and I'm looking at records, you can exchange that COR in records and put CORR in there. So it's records,
That's
that
an
kind of
idea I never thought of. That's a good one. I like that.
Kevin Corr. Now you have no relation to the chorus, I guess, the Cape Breton
No, I
trio?
don't think so. Because, like I said, my dad was very musically inclined, also, and we did do genealogy stuff and looking back into ancestry and whatnot. No, I don't think we are related to them. Um, That'd be cool though, but no, I don't think we are.
Andrea Corr, Sharon Corr, they all play like the violin and oh, excellent group. Have you heard of them, the
Yeah,
Chorus? Yeah,
yeah. I have heard of them. Yeah, they are amazing.
that's
It's
awesome.
just because that was the first thought too when I heard them. I'm like, really? I'm like, are they cousins or something? Like, what's going on here? And then they're not.
Well, we really appreciate you being on the podcast today. We're going to end the stream, but with one more further question. And can you give a little bit of advice your to the audience, up and coming heavy metalists, musicians, whoever, to follow in your footsteps, or anybody out there who wants a musician? What do you tell them?
If you feel like you want to do it and it makes you happy, do it. Don't don't listen to the self-doubt. Don't listen to people doubting you. Don't be afraid. Don't hesitate. Just do it. It was the best choice I ever made. It might not work. Nothing is instant in life, but if it's what makes you happy, you got to do it. You got to just do it to the best of your ability and keep going. Don't stop. Don't let anyone make you stop. Don't let any negative comments make you stop. Just just do it and keep doing it until you're happy.
Thank you, my friend. Really appreciate that. Kevin
Yeah.
Corr from Fossegrim Records, based in South Jersey, heavy metal label run by him, and he also fronts a band called Eternal Forlorn. Eternal Forlorn. You're just, and then he has releases. Havernal for Vindomen. I'm terrible at Swedish. I'm going to get a lot of
It's
emails saying,
it,
"You don't have any idea how to pronounce any Swedish names."
it,
Yes, I
it
do. Abba.
no, that one was it means before the wisdom. That was all the original iPhone recordings of me sitting there with a guitar and a little 10-inch practice amp.
Oh,
And
that's
I
cool.
don't know. I just figured it would be cool to put that out there. And so it fit with the have a mail thing too, because words of the wise and then before the wisdom. So it was like after I knew how to do what I'm doing and before.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. So we're going to end this stream.
Yeah.
Stay put for 1 second. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone. Any Swedish people out there can let me know what you think of Forle Visdomen and Havernal. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Peace.